I'm going to introduce 7 interviews that were made in May and June of the year 2008 in Belize at the NARCE, the National Resource Center for Inclusive Education. I think these interviews are amazing. They reveal the dedication, the enthusiasm, the commitment that leading educators at Stella Maris and the NARCE have for children with special needs. You'll hear how the 7 individuals got to where they are, and you'll see that the paths that they took were by no means straight. You'll hear the dedication, you'll hear the compassion, and you'll hear the commitment. And you'll also be informed. There's many things that can be learned from each of these interviews. And some of the techniques and strategies that are communicated are not the kind that you normally find in a traditional textbook on working with children with special needs. The interviews are in alphabetical order, and we begin with Mrs. Laverne Arnold. And Mrs. Arnold is a teacher at Stella Maris for children who are diagnosed with autism. She had very little background to speak of in education when she first began at Stella Maris, but in 2 years she has transformed the class of children into a remarkable cohesive unit where they're productive and where they do not exhibit many of the characteristics we associate with autism, but this is not how she found them when she first began. We then move to Mrs. Sharon August, and Miss August is a teacher at Stella Maris and has a unique and very successful program working with special needs children at Stella Maris who have been behind in their reading skills. With her very organized program, she has brought many of those students up to a level where they not only have competence in reading, but want to display it and are enthusiastic about their newly acquired skills. Next, we have Mrs. Eleanor Enriquez, and Eleanor and I go back 3.5 years because she was the first person I met when I walked through the door of what was then called the Special Education Unit in Belize City. And Eleanor has a long history in special education and will share some of her perspectives, and also at the end will tell us why it might be more difficult today working in special education than it was 10 to 15 years ago. Mrs. Dativa Martinez is the Director of Educational Support Services for the NARCE, and if there was one way to describe Dativa, it would be Miss Inclusion. Her dedication to the concept of inclusion of children with special needs into the regular classroom has served Belize education extremely well. Mrs. Merlene Neal is next, and Mrs. Neal has the job of being the assessment coordinator for all of Belize, a very time-consuming job that requires a workday that, well, goes beyond my imagination. And you'll hear her describe the actual parts of the assessment process. Next, we'll hear from Miss Erlette Thomas. And Miss Thomas is the vice principal of the Stella Maris School, and she'll describe how we might detect problems in the classroom and also how to involve parents. And finally, we have Miss Joy Westby, And Miss Joy, as she is affectionately known, is the principal at Stella Maris. And Miss Joy will reveal her sensitivity to the needs of children that we might not normally think of. They do not come to school without baggage. And she will describe some of the ways that we might be more sensitive to those needs. Not just sensitive, but effective as well. I think you'll enjoy all of these interviews as much as I enjoy doing them, and will learn as much as I did, going over them several times. They never get stale because the information is always fresh. Enjoy.